Welcome back to another Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo spoiler summary, everyone. As always, before we get into it, do everything you can to support the official release. This is not a market substitute, and what I want to do is use this video as a chance to review and give commentary over the new information that just released. And to be honest with you, before we even discuss the chapter, I want to say I am happy to see Akutami not being afraid to let all of his original and new characters have a chance to show us what they're all about and how they work in plenty of different situations. Because as much as I know a lot of people in the community want to see all of the old characters that they knew from the main series go into big fights with these new alien threats, I think it's important to note that with the way Akutami writes, it's characters that always come first, and you can see as much in this new chapter that we got. So the chapter begins with Usami filling Yuka and Tsurugi in about a quote-unquote man-eater that has appeared, and they are being instructed to exterminate it. Yuka and Tsurugi are very confused, considering that normally if it's just a regular animal or beast, the government would handle it, and why are sorcerers sticking their nose in something that isn't supernatural? However, Usami clarifies that this situation is happening in the Gifu prefecture of Japan, and Tsurugi immediately clocks that this might have something to do with mythology and paranormal things after all, considering the legend of the shark that swam upstream. But Usami corrects him and says this shark swims through the forest. And I really don't know if this was intentional and Akutami and Yuji recreated the shark deep in the Missouri forest meme, but this is hysterical to me. Maru, as the alien representative, is of course going to be tagging along with Yuka and Tsurugi on their mission, and Tsurugi is very clearly upset about the conversation he had with Cross in the last chapter, where he was told not to talk to him. Not realizing that Cross is Maru's twin brother, Tsurugi definitely takes that to heart and takes that out on Maru. As they take the train to Gifu, Tsurugi explains how cursed spirits usually only appear in Tokyo now. Maru asks to know what a cursed spirit is, and again, Tsurugi, who is upset from yesterday, says, "Oh, it's okay to talk to me now, huh?" Very hostilely, Tsurugi asks, wouldn't the aliens know since they already used Jujutsu? Yuka, just looking to defuse the situation, explains what we kind of already know, where the people of Japan have cursed energy and non-sorcerers accidentally leak this cursed energy, which results in the creation of cursed spirits from all of that negative energy. Tsurugi continues to explain that they haven't really exterminated any kind of cursed spirits outside of Tokyo over the last couple of decades, especially since the end of the Culling game, which tells us that cursed spirits have overall died down since the power of sorcerers has also gone down, with the previous generation getting old and dying off. The reason why everybody is on edge about this is because this only started happening where cursed spirits are showing up outside of Tokyo once aliens appeared. And Maru is kind of curious what Tsurugi is getting at when he says this, and Tsurugi looks dead at him and says, yeah, they're saying that the true identity of this man-eater is probably an alien. Maru can't really speak and just says that he'll talk to everybody when the time comes, making Yuka question if it really is aliens. But unlike Tsurugi, Yuka is willing to give Maru the benefit of the doubt, figuring that just like Usami, Maru probably has reasons of his own to not mention anything or explain his reasons. She doesn't necessarily think he's a bad person yet. Once we get to the scene of the crime, we find out that there have been 2 victims and 3 witnesses of the man-eater. And the witnesses claim that next to the body of a victim that was torn apart by the man-eater, they all saw a shark, which is why everyone is claiming that there is a shark floating through the forest. But now that the sorcerers are actually here to investigate, one of the witnesses wonders if they would have been mistaken by seeing that. However, the older man confirms that they definitely saw a shark. With the kooky old man being their only credible source, Yuka decides that the locals may have just misseen everything. And even after investigating the body in the autopsy, it seems like the bite marks are completely different from those of the other victims. So now on a dead end, Yuka goes to meet up with some other witnesses and see if they have a lead, leaving Tsurugi and Maru alone. And with nothing to really talk about, Tsurugi gets right to the point and says, hey, you know what? Beneath everything, I really do believe that you guys are about to start start a war with humans. I just want to know if they're truly invading us or not, and I want you to tell me right now. Maru is rightfully offended by this and asks what Tsurugi even means by that, since he is currently here with the Jujutsu sorcerers so that invasion doesn't happen. But more importantly, Maru asks Tsurugi what kind of moral authority he has to question him of all people, since the humans haven't exactly been completely fair on their end either. Making Tsurugi ask Maru that for someone who came into his house quote unquote uninvited, he sure has a lot to say about the hospitality, prompting Maru to say he's not exactly here because he wants to be, which again shows the level of storytelling that Akutami is trying to hit on in Modulo. It's very clear that there are a lot of political undertones in this story, especially in regards to Maru immigrating into Japan and Tsurugi's knee-jerk reaction to all of this. Whatever situation Maru has going on in his home planet, or whatever reason they have to be here, from this statement we can interpret that Maru didn't want to leave and would rather be at home. So to someone like Tsurugi who just sees an invading force, he doesn't quite understand the reason that they're here yet. So all he can assume is hostile intentions. Maru asks why Tsurugi's been picking a fight this entire time. What's wrong with him? Making Tsurugi lash out and say that Maru is honestly an idiot, and that as a sorcerer, it's not strange if he dies on a mission, but with an idiot like Maru next to him, it's bound to happen sooner than later. And Maru wants to know why Tsurugi keeps treating him like a little kid, and what inkling made him think that Maru was an idiot. Having Tsurugi finally explain why he doesn't trust Maru, and that's the fact that it took him so long in the first chapter to take out the kidnapper. He doesn't exactly understand Maru's technique, but if he used it so much earlier, he could have instantly stopped all of the fighting and made sure that the kids were safe without risking their lives at all. Maru doesn't want to go into that and says he can't exactly explain. He was ordered to not interfere, which is exactly the problem in Tsurugi's eyes, because he asks Maru if following orders is really more important than saving children's lives, which shuts Maru up for a moment, finally giving him the perspective of where Tsurugi is coming from. But right before Maru can respond, the man-eater shows up, bursting between them, having Tsurugi push Maru out of the way, ready to summon his cursed object. But Maru stops him, reminding Tsurugi that if he uses his cursed object in the forest, it will cause a wildfire. Tsurugi concedes and says that Maru's right, and he asks Maru if he can do anything for being such a useless fool. Maru is confused, but doing what he can, grabs onto the shark as hard as he can and says, hey, you know, if I hold on to him and restrain the shark, you can cut it without using fire. But amongst all of this commotion, they realize that the shark that they're grabbing onto is literally just a man in a shark costume, which is just even more meme-worthy entirely. And I know this makes a lot of people feel like Modulo is just wasting time, especially considering we only have 3 volumes. All of this is intentional. All of this is to help build the relationship between these 3 main characters. This is important storytelling, and we will be happy that we got a chapter like this later on. Maru says that there's an old man in the shark suit, and the man gets annoyed that he is considered old because he thinks he's young. The man instantly recognizes Maru and Tsurugi as Jujutsu High students, asking what the heck they would be doing here in the middle of the countryside. Tsurugi's surprised that he would know that they're Jujutsu sorcerers, but that's because the old man says he's actually a sorcerer himself, a Jujutsu High graduate named Nagata. Tsurugi and Maru explain that they're currently on an exorcism mission once they heard that the man-eater appeared, thinking that he, Nagata, is the man-eater himself. But Nagata clarifies that he would never eat humans, and he's been eating properly since he graduated, except, you know, when he drinks alcohol and has some snacks. He is actually also hunting the man-eater, who is not a shark, but actually a tiger named Toranosuke. Tsurugi is shocked to hear that the legends of wild tigers in Japan are true, to which Nagata clarifies a quarter of a century ago, a pair of tigers were brought in by illegal foreign traders, and they settled in the mountains. And through inbreeding, Toranosuke was born as their grandchild. Ever since it was a kid, it was a very clever tiger, able to stay out of sight, and even without gestures, just by looking into one another's eyes, it would be able to communicate with humans and show its innocence. Nagata actually had a special relationship with Toranosuke, but recently, ever since the quote-unquote mega solar eclipse near the summit reached the end of its lifespan, which probably has something to do with the alien spaceship showing up, supernatural entities have been increased in power. Because of that, for some reason, the river also dried up and the heat also increased, prompting Toranosuke to become more hostile as its water sources and prey dwindled. Unfortunately, the villagers showed up right when Nagata was there and missed Toranosuke, which is why everyone thought it was a floating shark. Tsurugi and Maru Maru are still down to help exorcise the tiger. However, Nagata explains he does not want to kill Toranosuke, again clarifying that he has a special relationship with the tiger. Tsurugi cuts Nagata off though and says by trying that, he's not exactly helping the victims or the families. But Nagata says it doesn't matter because this is as far as it goes. He has sensed bloodlust in the air, and he knows Toranosuke the tiger is here, prompting Nagata to start flying through the air as a shark once more. And as he swims through the air towards the tiger, he remembers that even back since the day he met Toranosuke, the tiger has always been clever. And as the shark closes in on the scent of blood, Nagata realizes that he ran right into a trap, and the tiger is actually on the tree above him, ready to jump down and strike. But just before the claws go completely through Nagata and kill him, Tsurugi runs in and tackles the tiger out of the way. Tsurugi takes a stance ready to kill the tiger, and Maru asks Tsurugi to please wait, but realizing he was probably wrong to think Toranosuke was the same little tiger he met earlier, Nagata clarifies to Tsurugi that it's fine to exorcise him, going back to a flashback to when the tiny little tiger baby had met with Nagata, and Nagata enjoyed having the tiger around because he himself was also alone. Nagata's parents died at an early age, just like Toranosuke's, so the two had each other, believing that although loneliness kinda stinks, it will always end up making them stronger, asking the tiger that if it was ever in a crisis moment where it couldn't get anything done, to come to Nagata and he would help it. Nagata admits that once the tiger started showing up again, he believed, at least for a moment, that Toranosuke was going back on this promise and trying to get help from Nagata. But upon being attacked, he realizes that the old baby tiger he knew is no longer there, asking Tsurugi as he cries to please, at the very least, kill Toranosuke without making it suffer. And as Tsurugi grabs his blade and Toranosuke goes in, we cut to a scene of the mountain as everything goes silent. Tsurugi, Maru, and Nagata speak after everything is all said and done, and Nagata apologizes for making Tsurugi take on such a role. But Tsurugi reminds Nagata that it's fine because that's his job as a sorcerer. Tsurugi goes back to check on Maru, and after having time to think, Maru immediately spills the beans on everything to Tsurugi, saying that his true task is to gather information upon whether the aliens and humans can coexist. Also revealing that his curse technique is something that connects him with his younger twin brother, so its use is prohibited because any of the power that he uses is also passed on to his younger brother Cross. And if any situation arises where he has no choice to use his power, it's only going to worsen the human's impression of aliens overall. It's not that he wanted to take the life of a child for granted, but he didn't want to hurt his younger brother or make a bad impression on humans, finally giving Tsurugi a chance to understand why Maru acted the way that he did. Tsurugi asks Maru if he's sure that he should be telling him this, and Maru says, no, I would appreciate it if you kept it a secret. Tsurugi asks why Maru would even decide to tell him such a thing, and Maru says because at the end of the day, he really just wants to get along with humans, believing that Toranosuke the tiger and Nagata's relationship might be some kind of parallel to the way aliens and humans could be. Although aliens and humans don't need to communicate with their eyes, so instead of just relying on feeling, he'd rather explain everything to express himself. From the shadows, a baby Toranosuke emerges, having shown that despite being exorcised, its baby form was able to hold on. Tsurugi makes its way toward the child, making Nagata worried he's going to kill it, but Tsurugi actually grabs the tiger by its scruff and proceeds to give it to Nagata, telling him that this time not to take his eyes off of him and raise it together, making Maru wonder if all of that is actually okay, because what if the situation ends up just like it did before? However, having all of this new information to stew on with Maru, he says it doesn't really matter if it ends up okay or not. What will happen is always unknown, saying that the same is for aliens and humans, making Maru smile as Maru agrees. And the chapter ends with Yuka still talking to a bunch of witnesses trapped and eating food with a bunch of old people. Again, I like this chapter. I think it was a great simple story to start the new characters off with and diffuse that tension between Tsurugi and Maru. And I am definitely excited to see how everything goes when the full chapter comes out and we have better translations to better understand the character dynamics within. Thank you so much if you made it this far into the video. Hit that like button if you have not already. Hit the hype button as well, and subscribe if you do not want to miss any future Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo content. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.